Folks, I think we've got all the council here. I'm going to go ahead and it's February the 4th, 2014, right at 6 p.m. here in City Hall at 115 West Bridge Street, Granbury, Texas. I'm going to call the City Council meeting to order. I'd like to first of all call upon Alan Latta with the Generations Church to lead us in our invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, then the pledge to the Texas flag. All rise, please.
Heavenly Father, we come to you in the name of Jesus, in the presence of these public servants and fellow citizens who've worked all day and are tired, and now here we are for a meeting. Lord, we pray according to your word for all that are in authority that we may live, first of all, in a peaceable land. God, we ask for ears to hear and understand everyone who shares here this evening, and the wisdom to know what decisions to make and what decisions to wait on. Let your peace prevail here in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, and one indivisible. At this time, I'd like to call upon Faye, I guess Faye, you're going to be doing, Faye Lane, to present us with a presentation from the Opera Guild. Okay? Sure. Blake. Hey. Thank you both. Thank you very much. As you know, we've got many people that have tried to, are helping us with the Opera House, and this is just one group here, organization. I know they got me to join that organization, and they send me an email all the time, and it's a great organization. So if you get an opportunity to join, see Faye or anybody here and join this group of people, because they do wonderful things, and as you can see this from this check right here. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much. There you go. No, I have it in my class. At this time, the council will conduct their open microphone. The City Council will provide an opportunity for citizens to present concerns or address issues that are not matters of consideration listed on a posted meeting agenda during an open mic session. A person wishing to address the City Council must first register with the City Secretary and provide the following information: name, resident, address, daytime telephone number, and the subject matter to be presented. Only one person may approach the microphone at one time, and only that person in the microphone, upon recognition by the presiding officer, will be allowed to speak for no more than 3 minutes unless otherwise directed by the presiding officer. Speakers must address their comments to the presiding officer rather than individual City Council members or the staff, and the speakers may file copies of their remarks or supporting information with the City Secretary, who will make the information available to the City Council and the City Manager if requested. The City Council will be allowed to receive input or information for the future agenda items, but will not be allowed to enter into any discussion. This council will be allotted a maximum of 30 minutes for the open mic during the designated council meeting. I have several folks that have signed the sheets to speak tonight. I have a couple here that I want to address real quick here and see if there's two different forms out there, and one form is to speak at a public hearing, and then we have one to speak at an open mic. These two people here, Daniel Derriman, am I pronouncing that right? Are you out there? Yes. Are you wanting to speak at an open mic? Because the item that you have on here is the first item, which is not a public hearing.
Oh, no.
Okay?
No, I'm just here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Then, okay. So right. And then I also had one from, is it Kroger rep? Adam Baring?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the same thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have, first of all, I'd like to call Stan Wasilewski up to the open mic. I'm going to get that right one of these days, Stan.
You will.
Promise.
You keep working on it.
I promise.
You're getting closer all the time. That's why I did it phonetically.
Okay.
Stan Wasilewski, 321 West Doyle Street, Granbury. Kay and I have a B&B, and we thrive on tourists. And the opportunity to have more tourists come to Granbury, not just for us, selfishly speaking, but for all of the city, is paramount. Not having somebody actively engaged in promoting tourism, conventions, bringing heads to the beds is something that troubles us. I'm holding this up because we're going to turn this in tonight. That's our hotel occupancy tax. In the almost 5 years that we've been here, and lady and gentlemen, we do not run a schlocky B&B, but this is the lowest tax that we've ever paid since we've been here. So our approach to this is we do whatever y'all can do to draw the person and or people to bring tourism to Granbury. And let's not talk about the lake. The lake now is a big river, and that's okay. It is what it is. So unless we can really count on God to raise that level up, it is what it is. So let's bring them to the square. Let's bring them to the B&Bs. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Our next speaker, we have Phoenix Van Dale. Van Dale, okay.
I'm waiting for my start so I can go. Oh, well,
Go ahead, start.
hello, my name is Phoenix Van Dale.
Address?
Address, 4170 East Highway 377. I live in the city. Okay, go, I'm on, all right. A couple things that I'm concerned about as regarding the Kroger tax abatement. I'm concerned that the drop in taxes for the short term during an already slow economy, how that's going to affect the Granbury's taxes coming in. If there's something that's going to make up for this tax abatement, and also for the precedent this sets for future businesses. If we allow one business to say, hey, if we move across town and build a new building, then we should get our taxes delayed for 10 years. Well, what's to stop any companies to saying, hey, I'm going to move a fancier new building down the street. Can you give me free taxes too? Well, not free taxes, they're going to pay it back, but have our taxes delayed. I think that sets a bad precedent. And so it comes down to two questions that I hope will be answered. And the two questions is, what benefit does this tax abatement provide Granbury that exceeds the current sales tax revenue currently provides that will not be paid during the 10-year tax abatement is over? The second question is it now setting a precedent that current businesses only need to move into a fancier new building to get their payments delayed? So those are the two basic questions that I hope are answered from my concerns. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Warren Ketteman.
Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager Warren Ketteman, 309 North Travis in Granbury as of last Wednesday. So new in town, my second day on the job as your Economic Development Director at Lake Granbury Area EDC. I'm pleased to be here. Many of the faces I recognize, some of you I've already met, and I'm going to make it my effort to meet each and every one of you, sit down and visit with you, as well as my board members. I've met some chamber folks already. We've had some ribbon cuttings and some good things going on. It's been an exciting 2 days. If you want to help move some boxes, I still have some things in the garage I need to shuffle around. So if you want to come over, if you're doing nothing this weekend and you kind of like that stuff, come and see me at 309 North Travis. But stop by the office and visit if you can. I want to get to know you, and you'll get to know me. And I'm excited about being here. There's some good things going on, more to come, and we'll get after it together and see some great things, more great things, I should say, for Granbury and Hood County. Thank you very much.
That concludes our open mic session. The next item would be our consent agenda. The first item being the approval of the council minutes for the meeting of January 21st, 2014. Council, you had an opportunity to review the council minutes. Are there any discussion or changes that you'd like to be made? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the council minutes of January 21st, 2014. I have a motion by Councilman Parsons. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second by Councilman Purple. Any more discussion, council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Those minutes are approved. The first item on our deliberation agenda will be to consider and approve an execution of a Chapter 380 agreement by and between the City of Granbury, Texas and Kroger, Texas, LP, for the proposed new development location on the southeast corner of US 377 and Highway 4 intersection to support the proposed Kroger Marketplace development. I'm going to call upon Scott Sopcich. Will give us a little more information on this.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager. With your permission and the City Attorney's assistance, I'd like to hit some high points of the proposed 380 agreement that you have as a draft copy in your agenda packet. What we have is a 380 agreement, and in essence, it proposes to reimburse Kroger for the new development located on the intersection of Highway 4 and 377. We've seen the preliminary plat and the final plat go through the process. We've also seen building elevations for the proposed store. There's a copy of the mock-up. There are the draft elevations. In essence, the 380 agreement proposes a 50% reimbursement on real and personal property taxes, as well as a 50% reimbursement on the available penny for sales tax. The contract is that Kroger construct and maintain the project. In the 380 agreement, the project is defined as a minimum 120,000 square foot store with a fuel dispensing station. I can also tell you that the preliminary plat also proposes 2 out parcels. So hopefully in the very near term, we'll see 2 additional businesses along the line of 377 as well. It also proposes a minimum employment base, full-time equivalency base of 165. This is up from the previous employment base of 75 from the current store. 380 agreement proposes that the developer will invest into a project cost for real and personal property to exceed, to exceed or go over $19.1 million. As the contract is currently fashioned, if Kroger, we have these embedded as performance standards. So if Kroger does not achieve some of these performance standards that are outlined within the 380 agreement, they do not get reimbursed. For example, we'll get annual correspondence from their corporate offices stating that they are obligated to and will each year employ 165 full-time equivalency jobs. We'll get correspondence regarding the construction valuation, property valuation that they have maintained, that $19.1 million investment, as well as annual reports that go to the comptroller's office on their sales tax as well. The other little nuance in this particular 380 agreement is we have a conditions precedent requirement stating that the execution and the validation of this particular 380 agreement is contingent upon the county executing a 381 agreement for property taxes as well. If I can defer your attention to the second page of the staff report, you'll see a couple of tables there itemizing kind of the breakdown of what the 380 agreement proposes. The top table shows a comparison between the new and the old stores. You can see the FTE equivalency compared between the two. This new store proposes to gain 90 additional full-time equivalency positions. We'll have about 54,000 square foot increase of retail sales area, and ad valorem tax, and you'll see the highlight next to the 3.3 million. That's basically a figure that came from the Hood County Appraisal District, but you'll see a $16.1 million increase on the investment to develop the property. And the other little nuance, and I'm going to refer to that here in a minute, is the annual sales tax. When you get to the second table below, you can see the payout calculations on leaving this as a vacant lot as opposed to developing it, entering into the 380 agreement and the payout and how this thing will pay for itself over time. You can see the ad valorem tax roughly at the required minimum threshold, $19.1 million, calculated to the annual amount, 50% of the annual amount over to the right. The sales tax at 17.2 over to the right for an original pay or a payout meeting those minimum threshold standards contained within the 380 agreement at 6.4 years, roughly. So relative to what's currently there now, which is a vacant lot, which I can tell you is a high weeds and grass code enforcement issue. It's an occasional site for a carnival from time to time, maybe once or twice a year, but I can tell you during the spring and summer, we do have, with those particular sites, high weeds and grass issues that we have to correspond with the property owner. There's a slab that needs to be dealt with. So, I mean, obviously, a $19.1 million investment is a nice consideration to have. The fact that we're giving half of the penny instead of the full amount shows that the city is getting some reimbursement out of this and not just abating it for the 6 years. So the city is getting some value out of this on the real and personal property tax as well as the sales tax. And you can see what that annual amount is on the second page as well. Late last week, we received a memo from Kroger, and they're suggesting 2 modifications to the draft that you have in your agenda packet. And if I can defer your attention to the letter on Kroger letterhead dated January 31st. And I can tell you that the city attorney, Stewart, myself, as well as the Kroger executives have put many months into this 380 agreement, and we came to a point where we're fairly comfortable. But like I said, at the last week, they did request 2 modifications to the draft that you have in your agenda packet. The first is reimbursement term. They have corresponded to me that they're already looking at a opening date to acquire their CO of April 2015, which is great news because they have it on their radar. It's a part of their Gantt chart and spreadsheet, so they're looking at their timelines and they're projecting when they're going to be open. The way we had the original draft contract was the reimbursement term started at January 2015, and they called and they wanted it prorated out. So that's what that revision does, is basically allow for the prorating to get their CO April 2015 and have that 2015 year and 2025 year prorated for 8 months and 4 months correspondingly toward the first and the last year of the agreement. I will tell you, well, let me go on to the second one. Item number 2, section 41G C, was the original discussions. We heard 17.2 million in annual taxable sales, which is quite a volume of taxable sales for a grocery store. Their suggestion was to lower it to 12.5 million. We worked with them on the language, and what they're proposing is to lower that benchmark of 12.5 million. However, if they report to the comptroller's office 16.8 million, then the reimbursement amount will be based on that 16.8 million, so it'll be an earlier pay down. When you look back on page 2 and you take into account the sales tax at 12.5 at the lower point of the benchmark year instead of the 17.2, what that does is lower it about $20,000, and it changes the benchmark payout from 6.4 years to 7.6. Again, if they exceed those projected taxable sales, they're going to pay it out earlier. The only other thing that I have in the contract that's a modification is the draft 380 refers to a 2013 date. We need to change that to a 2014 date if the council sees fit to execute the 380 agreement. With that in mind, there's a lot of financial perks that are positives in order to execute this agreement. Rather than have the property sit out there vacant, we're getting an increase in employment base. We're getting performance standards that they have to annually adhere to in order to receive their annual reimbursement. All that reporting annually has to be reported to our financial department. And I believe that's it, Mayor. If the council has any further questions, I'll be happy to entertain any on behalf of staff. I know, as you mentioned, Ms. Danielle Derriman is here on behalf of Kroger, so I'll defer back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Council, had a chance to look at all this. Is there any questions or concerns on this 380 agreement? Mr. Council Parsons, you got something?
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Manager, could you inform the audience of what has actually happened to sales tax in Granbury in the last couple of years and a year-to-date basis, so they'll understand what is happening to sales tax?
Oh yeah, sales tax is growing.
Growing.
Highest in the city's history.
We had a record sales tax collection last year, right?
Last year, this year, we're 4% ahead of even last year, this year.
4% ahead of last year. Yeah. So sales tax, in fact, is going up, right?
Oh yeah, we're growing.
Scott, in the analysis here that you have on page 2, would it be fair to say that if Kroger builds that store and reaches their objectives, that the city would recognize $31,400 more per year in property taxes and also some $76,000 per year in sales tax, resulting in a pickup of $107,000 in city income?
It's in excess of that on property. The $31,400 is the projected amount for the county. The $37,000 is for the city. So you're looking at, and that's half. That's half of the contribution. So if you look at the chart to the left, the 75 plus 62, that's probably the enhanced property tax value.
So with that in being said, I mean, we would recognize our growth would be the $31,000 or 50% of the deal.
Absolutely.
Same thing on the sales tax side. We would recognize 50% of the deal in the short year with an anticipated payback of something like 6.5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have right now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Couch?
First of all, I want to thank staff for preparing the statistics on this. I know it's done extremely well. But one thing that I don't see in this calculations, and I'm curious if you may know this, Scott, is when we have 90 new net jobs, that payroll, you know, what does that do to our economy? Do we have a sense of what that payroll would be on those 90 net new jobs?
I do not. Maybe perhaps Wayne can get his arms around that.
Is there anybody from the Kroger group that can answer that question just real readily or give us a ballpark figure? Don't be shy.
What's the average salary? What's the average salary?
Mayor, excuse me.
You're going to have to come up to the front.
Thank you.
Good evening. To answer your question, I'm not really sure what the combination of net new jobs is, what their wages would be. I'm sure a combination of minimum wage and then up from there. So I really can't answer that question.
What percent of them are minimum wage of your employees?
I don't know. I can get that information to you, but I don't have that.
Before you leave, could you state your name for the secretary?
Sure.
Recording secretary?
Danielle DeArmond, 1331 East Airport Freeway, Irving, 75062.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Council, there doesn't sound like we've got a lot of help there for you, Councilman Couch, but I'm sure they'll go out and research that for us.
The one thing that we did ask them was whether or not we were comparing apples with apples on FTEs, whether or not the FTEs for the new and old store were combined. That is, the aggregate of part-times to make 35 plus hours and full-time positions, and they were. So the comparison between 75 and 165 is the interpretation of FTE that we have in the 380 contract.
Council, any more questions for Scott?
I have one, Mayor, please.
Councilman Allen?
Scott, you said that is my mic too loud?
No, you're great.
Okay. Talking about a 380, you said there's going to be other two businesses involved in this?
There are, when you look at the Plat map, you'll notice that the 380 agreement focuses solely on the definition of project, which is the 120,000 square foot plus Kroger store, as well as the fuel dispensing station. They actually platted out two additional out parcels, and if you actually look at the plat map, where the frontage is on 377, there's two additional lots. So there are two additional businesses that could go there. Though the requirement for those businesses to go there are not rolled into the 380 agreement. You can see the payout just for those, for the Kroger store and the fuel dispensing station at that location, which is not a bad thing, because if, say, a restaurant goes there, they're not tied to the reimbursement, or the city's not giving 50% for those lots. It'll be the full value that we get on the sales.
We got the same thing coming up with Marshalls and Ross, that wasn't part of the 380, was it?
It was not. Well, where they're proposing to go, behind the Taco Casa, for example, initially is where they're looking at. There is no 380 agreement for that location. The only 380 agreement we have is for across the street for the HEB and the retail that's currently there.
But they can come back and ask for it.
They can. Anybody can come back and ask for it, but it's council's discretion.
Only to apply to the current amount, not to create new money.
They can't create new money.
Yeah, they approached us and said no.
Okay, I knew they had talked about it. Okay.
We're saying we don't have a problem with Marshalls and Ross revenue paying this loan back faster. Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think that's what they had in mind of doing, Wayne. I think they were in mind of getting some more money, but...
we initially discouraged that.
I hope. Okay. You're saying $12.5 million in taxes.
And taxable sales.
Taxable sales.
And that's what Kroger had written a letter and said, we want to lower this to 12.5 million taxable sales. And the way the new language is in, if they actually report to the comptroller and to the city 16 million, the reimbursable amount will be 16 million. We're not required to just do the 12.5.
Sure. If it's 8 million, it'll be 8 million.
If it's 8 million, they don't get paid.
They don't get paid.
They don't get paid nothing.
No, they need to actually go to 12.5 or higher. If they go 12, they have an underperforming year, and the city's not obligated to pay them anything on.
Okay. What are they doing now? Where they're at?
That was a NA. We didn't have their taxable sales. I know.
And we can't really announce that that's the private.
Yeah, but it's hard for me to sit here and make a decision. I mean, they may be running 12.5 right now.
No, they're not.
Councilman Allen, though, let me clarify it, though. When we dropped it from the 17 to the 12, and it's to their advantage that they would do the 16.5 or even 17, but even if they go over 17, correct me if I'm wrong, they still pay it, right?
That's correct, Mayor.
It is.
The only time they get penalized is under the 12, and it's not to their advantage to do that because it's going to take longer to pay off.
Mayor, you're absolutely right. It is to our advantage if they do more than 12.5.
Right.
But when they dropped it to 17.5, it's not our advantage because if they don't hit the 17.2 or 5 that they marked through here, 17.2, then they would know it's nothing. So it's their advantage to lower it to 12.5 because if they hit that mark, then they got to start paying us. If we left it at 17.2, they would have to hit 17.2 before they start paying us. Am I looking at right or wrong?
Well, if they, with the new language, if they hit 17.2, we'll reimburse them on 17.2 and they pay it down quicker.
Right now. Right. But if the goal was for 17.2 instead of 12.5, they'd have to hit the 17.2 first before they'd be getting any credit. Isn't that right?
Based on the previous language, but I can see where Kroger's going this. They want to be somewhat conservative with their taxable sales estimate to make sure that they pay it out.
I agree with both you guys, but honestly, it's hard to sit here not knowing what they're doing now because you can rob, kind of like the gentleman said there, you can start opening up new places, just move across the street and ask for 380, and we're going to be, our revenue comes off taxes, our city. And if we're not getting more taxes, then how are we bettering ourselves?
But I think
ensure that our estimates are correct without saying.
Yeah.
Anything. No, I don't want.
But Council, now they
analysis
actually seen a benchmark that they knew that they couldn't meet, and that's what they're asking us, is they want to set that benchmark, but they are willing to go ahead, and if they exceed that benchmark, to go ahead and pay out.
It's their benefit to lower that benchmark.
I guess all I can say is the estimate that you see is valid, okay? I can't tell you what the numbers are. We know what the numbers
The 17.2?
No, the savings is valid.
Okay, but if it's 12.5 right now, how do we better ourselves? I don't understand that.
We don't know that.
Can't share that.
I have a question. Okay, in order for me to make an informed decision, if we're going to take this to a vote, is just bringing it back to what I know there's a little bit of controversy about what we did for HEB and what we could potentially do for Kroger. But can you tell me what benchmark was set for HEB?
I can tell you we did not roll the performance benchmarks in the HEB contract like we did. There's a lot more language that holds the applicant speak to the fire on performing as opposed to HEB. Mm-hmm. In essence, the HEB contract requested $1.2 million to offset some of the internal infrastructure costs. It was more related to infrastructure, water, wastewater, the development cost, and I can tell you there are no performance benchmarks that we have in here to tighten the contract up.
So would it be fair to say that since we're giving them a benchmark, we're actually holding them more accountable?
Relative to the previous 380.
More so than we did for HEB?
With HEB, correct.
Okay.
I would say so, yes.
Council, let's make sure we stay on the Kroger issue, though we can't do a lot of comparisons here because we're voting on the Kroger 380. What I'd like to do is if one of the representatives would like to come up to the podium, and the question I have is, how did we come about to the 12 and not 15, 16? Can we talk about that maybe? Maybe to kind of clarify why that benchmark is more usable than. Okay.
Yeah, we're buttoning up our budgets internally. We're going through final funding approval and reviewing the final contract of the 380 agreement with our tax department. We had just decided that the $17.2 million benchmark is a little bit unrealistic, and our intent to lower that is so that we could pay down the 380 agreement sooner and satisfy that agreement before it terminates in 10 years.
that they paid off earlier, like,
Right.
once the agreement terminates and the city gets full tax value.
And actually, if they just met the benchmark every time, which is 12, it only, it doesn't increase that much.
That's correct.
Thanks, thank you. You had something?
I will say that this 380 agreement, when Scott and I negotiated it, it does include the language that says the contract terms out after either they hit the 1 year or the 10 years, whichever comes first, which is why we can have that early payout. And speaking to Councilperson Meyer's questions, when we did HEB, we didn't include any benchmarks in that. The thought process being it was a new project and we had a whole shopping center. But this one, we have multiple benchmarks, and I specifically drafted language that if they don't meet any one of those, they don't get paid for that year. That's something new that we didn't have in that other.
Okay.
Okay, council. Is there any more questions for Scott?
Only one more question. I guess it's more to the attorney. I appreciate the benchmark, but it's hard for me to sit here as a councilman and say, let's give away our tax money, not knowing how much we're really going to be giving away, difference in what we're taking in today from them, where they're located at today. I think if that could come back and backfire on us, not knowing, or it would be me. I mean, good conscience, I couldn't vote for it, not knowing what the real number is going to be.
I would submit you know exactly how much the dollars is. That's 1 million.
Well, and also to
Yeah.
clarify,
You know exactly how much
federal law prohibits the city from revealing the exact tax numbers of any business. So the reason we can't tell you is because it's federal law. And I'll submit to you the agreement has a payout of $1 million. And whether they pay that off in 10 years or 5 years or 6 years, that's the number. That's the maximum number. That's how we wrote it.
So is that why you're saying that 12.5 is a protection for us, like a parachute?
They didn't perform, they don't get the money that year.
That's
Year.
But they have 9 more years. The first year they don't hit 12.5 million. They don't get any applied to that million.
And that's still a payout at
But
7.5
9
years.
years, if it adds up to $1 million, they get their $1 million. If it doesn't add up to $1 million in 10 years, they don't get $1 million. Okay? The most we ever would pay out would be $1 million.
Help me, Mr. City Manager. If we pay them out $1 million, that means we made $1 million.
We made
Right?
That's right, because we're only
I mean,
paying half.
we're only paying half. So if they make $1 million, we make $1 million.
Right.
And that's the pickup for us.
On
within
half of the
7
tax.
years. On half the tax.
Tax, yeah.
And then after that 7 years or after the 10 years, then you get 100% of it.
So we're giving them $1 million for the new building.
And we're getting $1 million for them to move into a new building.
Mayor.
We're giving $1 million of the $2 million if they're going to pay us. We're giving $1 million back.
Yeah.
Councilman Couch?
Dating.
Councilman Couch?
Would it be permissible for me to ask our new economic development director a question?
I don't see why not. Put him under fire.
Yes, sir.
Welcome aboard.
Well, Warren, the way I'm looking at this for myself is that if we had a company come to town and tell us, I am going to bring 90 new jobs to your community, and our payroll is going to be somewhere around $2 to $2.5 million per year, what kind of exponential benefit is there from those new jobs and that new payroll?
You would sit down and look at that, council member, and then look at your multiplier, 2 in communities. Most communities range anywhere from, I would say, 1.5 to 3 in the multipliers, according to what kind of services you have in your community. The less services you have, the less your multiplier is, the payroll in your community, of course. But the more services you have, the more that money stays locally and churns around town. So 90 jobs, if it's a manufacturer, maybe they're paying $20 an hour, 2,080 hours a year, 40,000 times 90. I don't have my
3.6 million.
Somebody help me out on that one?
3.6 million.
Yeah, 3.6 million of new payroll in your community that may churn 3 times. That's $10 million. Not too shabby. Not counting, we didn't even talk about property taxes, that sort of thing.
I don't think grocery stores pay $20 an hour.
No, yeah, that's
say
true.
I was
That's
using
true.
a payroll of about 2.5, which is average around 10.50 an hour, is where I came up with 2.5 million.
Right.
So you would say that you could take that times 3.
Yeah, very possible. Very possible you'd have that kind of churn in your community. Yeah, 2.5 to 3 times the churn on those dollars as people spend money in the community in various places. Yes, sir. I think the issue, though, as I'm sitting here listening, I think some of the issue is it's an existing business in Granbury. I think that's where some of the questions come in. How do you justify that with someone coming from the outside, someone that's already here, but doing something very unique and different and expanding? And can I respond with a question, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, go ahead. Warren.
My question is, the ad valorem tax, when Kroger moves, and I'm coming into this second day on the job, but when Kroger moves from their existing location, do they own that location, or is that owned by a private development company, or someone else owns that?
They own it.
Kroger owns that location, okay. There'll still be ad valorem taxes paid on that location. Those don't go away. And I would imagine someone would move into there in that that's a pretty good location. Doesn't fit their needs today, or they wouldn't be building this, but someone else will move into there. That's going to add jobs and other benefits. So,
and we've sat in several meetings and talked about this. We've talked about the advantages, disadvantages, and all this. And we're at the point right now where we're talking about the 380 to try to seal this and on the way.
it's cost benefits analysis. You're doing exactly what councils have done that I've dealt with. Yeah, it's cost benefit. How do you weigh all that for your community? Absolutely, you're doing the right thing.
Well, thank you.
So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Here's sort of an expansion on the story. The new building is going to be worth $16 million more. So what do you think the efficacy of an abatement for a new building or a new structure at $16.1 million and creating 90 extra jobs?
Absolutely. Yeah, you'd sit there and you'd have the same discussion. I don't think we'd have as much. I don't think we'd have as many questions and discussions, Councilman. If it was brand new coming from Arizona or somewhere, said, hey, this is what I want to do, and we'd say, wow, that's fantastic, welcome, we'd love to talk to you about that. But yeah.
I think what you're going to see, just like you've seen with HEB and that whole center, is we have now new businesses coming in next to it. I think you're going to see the same thing on Kroger because it's a retail activity. And that's not even built into this, is we get new business along with Kroger coming in. And there are people that come with Kroger just like people come with HEB and other areas. So.
And I'm sure you consider all agreements in a case-by-case basis. So that's your job as council members, to take that data on any project that comes in and weigh the good and the bad of each and every project separately, not basing it on another project you've done or anything, because they all have their own merits and their own detractions. So you weigh those individually on every one you do.
Let's got a couple more questions.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
There were 2 out parcels, right? And one of those is their gas station?
There are 3 out parcels.
3 out parcels.
So we have 2 available vacant out parcels.
Are those the standard 1 acre restaurant lots, or are they bigger? Or
they're larger. They're more sizable, so we can get a larger scale restaurant there.
Larger scale, okay.
You know what the acreage is? I can't read from.
Lot 4, which is the southern lot, the lot south of the gas station lot, that's about 1.7 acres. And Lot 2, which is the most northern lot, eastern lot actually, this is kind of arranged differently, but Lot 2 is 2.5 acres.
So it's bigger than a McDonald's lot, kind of. Quite a bit.
One other little nuance that I want to make mention of as a sidebar comment, but it certainly is related to this site that helps kind of put the cream on the coffee, so to speak, is we saw a final plat, and we all know that this is fairly heavily vegetated, and our development standards for taking out preserved trees is pretty substantial. So in light of them actually getting this $1 billion request, they're actually sending a check to us that's going to, because it's got to go to a dedicated fund, a tree fund or a park fund, that is an amount that the city's getting that's going to lower, obviously, their consideration costs. I can tell you the tree conservation plan calls for about a $320,000 dedication to our park and tree fund.
That's right at the beginning.
Does the site plan allow for additional shopping center, or is it strictly for the store itself? Ancillary to the store, is there room for more shopping center? Or?
In looking at the lot, the way it's laid out with the parking to support the square footage of the store and the detention needed to support the drainage coming through the basin before, we talked about the culvert under Highway 4 where there's a point of constriction. It looks like the lot for the larger store there is pretty built out. Yeah, so in essence, we're looking at the store to support, or the main lot to support the Kroger store, and the 3 lots, one of which is for the fuel dispensing station.
Yeah, but there is more retail for outside the project to be built next to Kroger.
Well, and from what I understand, talking to Kroger, and Daniel may want to come up here, this is going to be a larger scale store, and they may have a larger offering of dry goods and possibly furniture. So maybe if I can get her to PR, possibly the offer.
Why don't you sit on the front row there?
Exactly, I should have. Yeah, so this store is our newest marketplace concept, 123,000 square feet, and I just want to clarify on my statement of new jobs from earlier that, you know, it's not just baggers and checkers and cashiers that we're looking for, but adding new departments such as apparel, which we just added to our Forney store that opened a couple weeks ago. It's beautiful. You should check it out if you haven't seen it. We have Fred Meyer Jewelers. We have our home goods, kitchen place. You get your pots, pans. You can get your coffee pots there. Extended service departments.
Not just another Kroger store.
Not just another Kroger store. No, it's much more.
Is the one in
your
Forney
department store
comparable?
with grocery?
Is the one in Forney comparable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that is our latest and greatest layout. We're all very pleased with it. We've received great feedback. So, you know, we're looking for baggers to department managers to co-managers for the store as well. If you recognize the main drive that we have that kind of curves like an S, we have strategically placed that so that it lines up with HEB's drive. That is the main drive for the center, but we also placed it there so that if there is more development, or when there is more development to the east of our project, that they could use that main drive for access as well.
Thank you. Council, any more questions?
Mayor,
Councilman Allen.
Scott didn't answer that question. You said the 320. When is that paid to us for the trees? 320,000.
Oh, actually, I got an email from Kroger yesterday stating that the check was in transit. Now, we have an understanding that this 380 agreement is very critical to them in order to make their spreadsheets work.
So we're actually just putting out 700,000.
Once we make that deposit and they go file their final plat, they have the green light to coordinate with the city on their pre-construction meeting. Their engineering plans are approved. So they're waiting on this 380 and waiting for us to deposit the check for them to continue forward.
Very good. Thank you, Council. Any more questions? Discussion. Thank you, Scott. At this time, I will entertain a motion here to approve the execution of the 380 agreement that we've talked about between the City of Granbury, Texas and Kroger, Texas, LP.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the execution of this Chapter 380 agreement by and between the City of Granbury and Kroger, Texas, LP. I will second.
Mayor, if I may, does the council
I
want
just want to clarify that. We might want to,
As amended, would that be the way to put it?
yeah.
as amended with the consideration of the language suggested by Kroger in a letter dated January 31st and the dates for 2014.
As amended as to the reimbursement term and as amended to section 4.1.3.c.
Very good. We got a motion. Do I have a second? We have a second by Councilman Couch. Any more discussion, Council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That agreement is approved. Thank you very much. Our next item is a public hearing regarding a request of Stan and Kay Wasilewski.
I didn't hear you, Mayor.
Okay. To renew a specific use permit for 321 West Doyle Street to allow for a 5-guest suite hosted bed and breakfast and consider an ordinance providing for the said SUP. We're going to call upon Chad Ronkin. He's going to get his feet wet and help us out a little bit. So Scott, Chad.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. As you said, this is a renewal for an SUP. This is a 5-guest suite bed and breakfast. It's located on the corner of Thrash and Doyle Street. The SUP was previously approved in 2012 for a two-year term period. That's since termed out. The applicant is since renewing this to get on the spot. It's the Granbury Gardens Bed and Breakfast. This is the aerial of the site. Another aerial of the site. This is in the parking plan. I can tell you that this particular bed and breakfast does have ample parking to support the 5 guest suites. The P&Z deliberated this on January 24th, I believe. Both staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission are recommending approval. We have no filed incidents or reports that have occurred in the 2 years since this SUP was approved. So staff and P&Z are recommending approval for a 4-year term period. And I can say we did send out notices within 200 feet of this request, and we got quite a few notices, I believe 4 or 5 from adjacent property owners in support of this SUP renewal. And with that, I believe that concludes my brief. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Shad. Sorry about that.
You're okay.
Council, do you have any discussion?
I'm having trouble getting back to it. What was it for, how many years?
4.
4?
It was 2 years previously in 2012, so it's timed out, I believe, January of this year. So staff and P&Z are recommending to increase that term period to 4 years.
At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Does anybody in the public want to talk on this topic? Council?
I haven't owned property within the 200 feet. I own property within the circumference of this, and I was on planning and zoning when this first went through, so I've seen it going through a long drive, and finally got it straight. But he does a good job. If you want to see somebody work, go by his property. He's out there sweeping the street, getting the leaves off of it. So I think it does a good job and gives a good impression to people that come to Granbury for our bed and breakfast.
Thank you, Council.
I thought it was Kay did all the sweeping.
Council, any more discussion on this topic? We'll now close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
We'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Couch and a second by Councilman Allen. Are there any more discussion, Council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That is approved. Our next item is a public hearing and consider and approve a request of CSL Granbury LLC to replat lots 1 and 2, Block A of the Courtyards at Granbury, addition of lots 1-R and 2-R, Block A of the Courtyards at Lake Granbury addition. The property is located at 801 and 853 Kalinko Drive. Shad, you want to let us know a little bit about that one?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a replat. You have 2 existing lots. Lot 1 is the southern lot. It's currently the location of the Courtyards. Lot 2, the northern lot, is currently undeveloped. The P&Z and the council have seen this plat, previously in 2011. Basically, at that time, they were requesting the same thing. What this plat seeks to do is basically adjust the common lot line between lot 1 and 2 and shift it approximately 50 feet to the north. In this particular aerial that you're looking at, you can see the dotted line represents the existing lot line, and the solid line represents the proposed lot line adjustment. Like I said, this came before the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. They went through the process. The plat was approved. The subdivision ordinance does require that those plats be filed within 6 months of the council approval. That never occurred. At this point in time, they're submitting it back to get that lot line adjusted. One other thing that I should add regarding this plat application, previously when this was platted, we did not get the fire lanes or requisite water line. We do have a water line loop internal, basically underneath the existing fire lane. So one thing we were able to do with this replat was actually get that dedication to cover our Public Works Department. With that, the only kind of, I guess, nuance with this plat is a variance request, and that's regarding sewer extension. The subdivision ordinance does require that we have a sewer line extended through the entire frontage of the property. In this case, it's kind of hard to make out where it is, but it basically terminates about right in the middle of Lot 1R. However, all the, I guess, linkage-wise, everything is served around it. Based on that, the staff is recommending approval of the variance. Staff is also recommending approval of the replat as presented by the applicant.
Thank you, Shad. I will now open up the public hearing to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to talk on this item? Council, is there any question or discussion on this item? Now close the public hearing. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the replat application as presented and with approval of the variance request for 3 Lot 9 and 4.5.
Councilman Parsons, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Have a second by Councilman Couch. Any more discussion, Council? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. That is approved. Our next item is a public hearing and consider approval of request of Cardinal Ridge LLC to final plat a 1.46.7 acre tract of land located in the Robert Barrett Survey, abstract number 355 as Lot 2, Block 1 of the Cardinal Ridge Addition. The property is located east of intersection of Highway 377 and FM 4. Chad?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second final plat application we've seen for the Cardinal Ridge Addition. The first final plat application was for Christian Brothers. This lot is basically adjoining right to the west of that property. You can see here it's highlighted in yellow. This final plat application is for the development of the site for an AutoZone retail center. I've got a site plan kind of further down here in the presentation. Approximately a 7,500 square foot building with parking to support it. What I can tell you about the actual plat, all stormwater runoff is proposed for a stormwater detention basin. You can kind of see that south of the building. Those designs have been forwarded through the city engineer or the acting city engineer, Friesen Nichols, and that design has been, their agreement with that design submitted by the applicant's engineer. Here's an actual copy of the plat. This plat will dedicate fire lane easements, as you can see, both on and off site. Don't know if the council is aware, this site actually has an ingress egress point on Highway 377 that you can see to basically the top right of the property, and that continues through all 3 lots to Highway 4. So this specific lot will continue that, which was basically put down for Christian Brothers, and you can see that on the plat. A portion of that's off-site, that fire lane. They'll dedicate that by a separate instrument, and that will be basically dedicated at the time that the plat gets filed with the county. Other than that, we do have a variance request regarding an easement width. The variance request is along the east side of this property. The subdivision ordinance does require that any public utility main, in this case a water line, be centered in an actual 15-foot easement. In this case, it's actually not centered within 15 feet, but with the easement on site of this lot and the adjacent lot on Christian Brothers, you actually have about 25 feet of actual easement. Public Works is comfortable with that. Our city engineer is comfortable with that, and they are recommending approval of that variance. The only other thing that I'll mention is regarding a public improvements agreement. There are public improvements in the form of a public water line that basically loops, provides connectivity to what will be, I believe, Lot 1. That's going to be the last lot in this development on the corner of Highway 4 and 377. So that water line is basically installed. It comes down south, and it provides a stub out point for the lot to the west. That public improvement agreement, and it also includes a hydrant, but that agreement is less than $25,000, so that can be executed by staff. And with that in mind, like I said, staff is recommending approval of the variance request and approval of the final plat application as presented by the applicant.
Thank you, Chad. I'll now open up the public hearing. Does anybody in the public like to speak on this matter? Thank you. Now close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions or concerns about this topic? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Do I have a motion?
I move for approval as presented. Second.
Okay, is that with the variance? Council
Approval of the variance to section 3.3.a of the subdivision ordinance and approval of the final plat.
We have a motion by Councilman Parsons, second by Councilman Purple.
I agree to the change.
Any more discussion, council? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. That one is approved. Our next item, kind of a twofold item. I'll read through both of them, but we'll have to approve each one individually. But the first one being the public hearing regarding a request of RCB Ventures LLC to rezone property located at 6015 East Highway 377, being a 1.945 acre tract of land located within the J. Howard Survey, abstract number 717 from Interim Holding to Heavy Commercial, and consider and approve the ordinance providing for the said rezoning. That same item is a public hearing regarding the request of RCB Ventures LLC for a specific use permit for 6015 East Highway 377 to allow for the operation of a contractor shop with outside storage yard in a heavy commercial zoning district, and consider an ordinance providing for the said SUP. Chad, you want to talk about that one a little bit for us, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This is the property. It's located almost right at the edge of the city on Highway 377. It's on the south side of 377. I believe it was a location of a previous stone yard. In this particular case, the applicant is proposing to move from the current location on Plaza Drive out to this site at 615 East Highway 377. You can see by the zoning map that it is currently zoned interim holding. I believe this area was zoned into annexed into the city approximately 2005. When we annex property, generally it'll get that interim holding zoning district. It's a placeholder zoning district. It captures what was there when we annexed it, and it's basically allowed to operate as that use until that use either changes or intensifies. So in this particular case, we do have a change of use. A grass company will be going into this site, and that will require a certificate of occupancy, hence the change in zoning and the issuance of the SUP. By zoning ordinance, they have to change that to heavy commercial, and they have to get that SUP for the contractor shop with the outside storage. We do have this is once again an aerial of the site. You can kind of see the building relation to some of the old storage bins, which I believe the applicant is going to kind of utilize some of those, as well as the parking maneuvering area. Here's kind of a site plan. And I believe this is upside down. I apologize. I tried to get the writing where you could read it, but that was also turn the site plan upside down. So the bottom portion of it is the access off 377, and you can see how that will kind of go south and turn due east. There is a pond that the applicant wants to utilize for kind of a decorative feature, which you can see in the center of the property. The building itself, the applicants will kind of do some improvements on the facade of that. Zoning ordinance requires 30% improvement, and the applicant's agreeing to do that. They did go to the ZBA for approval for some of the landscaping requirements. They will have some, basically some grass and minor landscape improvements along Highway 377, excuse me, and improve the site. Other than that, I think that concludes my brief. During the P&Z meeting, staff recommended approval. P&Z is also recommending approval of both the zoning and the specific use permit as presented by the applicant.
Thank you, Chad. I'll now open the public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to talk on either one of these items, the rezoning or the SUP?
Don't really have anything to say. I'll let you know we're all present. If there are any questions, be glad to help.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I'll close the public hearing. And council, do you have any comments or concerns? I will say that that's an area on 377 that needed to be cleaned up in a long time. I hope you're going to remove that old boat out there.
Actually, the boat's not on our property.
Oh, okay.
If it were, I'd remove it. There's plenty of people that.
Thank you.
Randy, would you talk a little bit about what you might be doing landscaping-wise? You're going to improve the look there? Sort of.
Go ahead, come up to the mic there and introduce yourself. Tell where you live at.
Randy Price, I'm the president of RCB Ventures, doing business in Hood County as Tritex Grass. 1924 Acton Highway is our office, general offices. We're currently located at 1924 North Plaza Drive. Would like to move to this location out on the highway. The question was, what do we plan to do with the landscape, and what's our general direction? We'd like to do grass plots along the front of that property. There's a chain link fence there currently. We'll leave that fence, and right in behind it be approximately 10 by 10 squares of the variety of grasses that we grow and sell that we'd put right along that fence. That pond that's in question is actually a man-made, I assume was going to be a koi pond. It's more to show the decorative rock that the folks previous were trying to sell. We would like to improve that if we can make it hold water. We just want to improve that more for landscape, maybe put some picnic tables, that type of thing around it, along with some more grass, just to kind of beautify that area and make it a little more eye appealing for our customers.
The reason I'm asking, Randy, we've made, we got a caddy point across there, the rock company, we've made them jump through some pretty heavy hoops in terms of hiding the rock and that kind of thing. We'll make sure that's some kind of provision for hiding, or, making the truck sort of out of sight in the back of the yard, or how that might be.
Currently, there are some, the rock, the concrete blocks that are used to store where the rocks were. Mm-hmm. We built that wall up a little taller. We'll park the majority of our equipment behind that wall and really won't be seen. Most of what you will be able to see will be from those rock bins out to the highway, and that will be more for, not for storage, but it'll be for placement of grass and customer egress, regress off the property.
Council, any more questions for Mr. Price? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. Now, Council, do you have any more discussion on this, either one of these items? If not, I'll entertain a motion on item number 5 to approve the rezoning of the property located at 615 East Highway 377.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Councilman Allen and a second by Councilman Perkle. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That one is approved. The next one, I'll entertain a motion to approve the SUP for the property at 6015 East Highway 377. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Allen and a second by Councilman Perkle. Any more discussion, Council? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That SUP is approved. Our next item, number 7, is a public hearing and consider the approval of a request of Texas Lakes Incorporated for a variance to section 3.1.J of the City of Granbury subdivision ordinance to allow the developer to utilize a road-based material on 2 temporary cul-de-sacs located at the end of Boat Landing Trail and Paddle Boat Drive. The property is located west of Highway 51 and north of Hunter Park. Chad, you want to give us some more information on that one, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. This is a plat variance related to the latest phase of Abe's Landing. I believe that was phase 5A2 that went through the council, I believe, in November of last year. During that time, let me get to an actual plat exhibit here. This is the phase delineated in red. You can see it's basically the second phase south of Abe's Landing, the intersection of Abe's Landing and Weatherford Highway. I've actually got a plat exhibit too. During the plat deliberations, the subdivision ordinance basically has a section that talks about the phasing of adjacent phases And when streets are dead-ended to allow an adjacent phase to be built in the immediate future, that turnarounds be installed at those road dead ends. And you can see the actual easement dedications in the red circles here, and that's going to be at the end of Boat Landing Trail and Paddle Boat Drive. We did get those easements actually, well, they're not actually dedicated yet. The plat was approved, and they'll file those easements when they file the plat. I believe that was brought in today. Actually hasn't been filed at this point in time. Regardless, within those actual cul-de-sacs, like I said, the city subdivision ordinance does require both the dedication of that easement as well as a material to be put in there. The DRC has always required asphalt for these temporary turnarounds. And then, of course, those are pulled up, dug up when the adjacent phase is put in and those streets are continued. So that's what the variance, when we received this application prior to the P&Z meeting, which was the late January, excuse me, based on the application, staff assumed that this, and based on some of the previous discussions that we had had with the developer's representative, that they were requesting a variance to basically utilize an alternative surface other than asphalt, which was a road base, and I'll let the engineer explain that in more detail in a little bit. So that's the way we posted this application. We took it to P&Z with the notion that this was a variance request for an alternative surface. During the deliberations at P&Z, the applicant basically was requesting to not install the cul-de-sacs whatsoever. So that's the difference on probably where the conversation is going to go other than what was posted. I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Regardless, staff did look at this in a DRC meeting upon receiving the variance, and there's two probably points that I want to point out before I get to what staff's recommendation was on that variance. And keep in mind that these are private streets, and that being the case, the city subdivision ordinance doesn't currently require any kind of a surety for private streets. So any other development, when you have a publicly dedicated street, publicly dedicated infrastructure, we get surety for that to hold basically if the development defaults in any way, then we can draw down upon that and basically install that infrastructure. In this particular case, because they're private streets, we don't have that. The other unknown is, of course, when the next phase is going to be installed and how long will these temporary cul-de-sacs actually have to be used. So based on those two factors, during the DRC review of this request, we have a memo basically that you should have in your packet. The city engineer, the DRC, is recommending denial of the variance request. During P&Z, like I said, there was other deliberations that took place. At that point in time, the applicant basically offered up to hold building permits, and you can see the two lots that are affected. That's going to be lot 43, block 6, which has a yellow X in it, and then on the other side, lot 20, block 7, which also has an X in it. What the developer was basically offered up at that time was to hold building permits on those lots until such time that the adjacent phase was installed and that roadway was installed within that phase. Additionally, the P&Z did recommend approval based on that condition offered up by the applicant. Not only that the two lots be held with permits, but also that barricades be installed basically adjacent to lot 19 and lot 42. The whole thought there was to create any kind of a havoc for fire trucks backing up and down. So just to summarize, the DRC was recommending denial of the variance. The P&Z did recommend approval of the variance with the following conditions that you can see here. No building permit issued for lot 43, block 6, or lot 20, block 7, as well as the barricades to be installed at the street termination. And with that, I think I've touched on everything. I'll be happy to answer any questions if the council has them. And with that, Mayor, I'll defer back to you.
Thank you, Shad. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Is anybody in the public that would like to talk about this particular item? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Trace Strevey with Baird Hampton and Brown Engineers, represent the developer. Shad did a great job explaining kind of what happened at P&Z, but if you don't mind, I'd like to clarify just a couple of things.
Sure.
There is some discrepancy in the ordinance. It's not a big deal. In one place, it talks about dead-end streets shall not be longer than 250 feet. In another place in the fire code, actually, it requires that dead-end streets longer than 150 feet have a turnaround. And then in another place, it clarifies the interpretation for this phase is that when a street is provided for future extension, it shall have a cul-de-sac. So 150 feet requires a cul-de-sac by fire code, 250 feet if it's not a phased development, and 0 feet if it is a phased development. Now, why we're bringing this variance forward, the developer built these cul-de-sacs as part of 5A-1, which you can imagine if you take those 2 red circles and move them up to the phase line, they were on the ground for less than 45 days between the time that those things were finished and the next phase of the development construction started. So it was plus or minus $30,000 to build those cul-de-sacs and about $8,000 to rip them out and haul them to Fort Worth to dispose of them, because there's not a place in Granbury to get rid of asphalt material. So we opened up a conversation with the city about what we could do to maybe mitigate some of those costs while still providing adequate, safe, circulation within the development for fire trucks and school buses and people living there. If you look at the screen, you can see one of the major differences. In 5A-1, without those cul-de-sacs, we just had a street that didn't really have a good way to turn around. In 5A, once we built 5A-2, you'll notice that we've created a complete loop, internal circle. A fire truck or a school bus or trash truck or anybody else is going to turn into that development and be able to get back out. So that was what led us to the conversation about not building a cul-de-sac at all. And we had lots of conversations about, okay, well, at least don't make us put down asphalt. That was the position that Kevin Jones had, was he's fine with a cul-de-sac without asphalt. Just give me some road base. In the interim time period, I can turn around a fire truck and get out of there. Now, I can tell you, it's kind of funny, but not funny. I didn't really expect to be successful at Planning and Zoning Commission to not build a cul-de-sac at all. And the day that I was here on Monday last week, our contractor was hauling road base out to the site. So we have gravel cul-de-sacs in the ground right now exactly the way that staff wrote up their recommendation and not the way that it was approved at Planning and Zoning Commission. So we've already spent the money on the road base, so if I could, I'd like to kind of lean back on some of the conversations at P&Z but take it a slightly different direction. We've got the road base in the ground. It's compacted. It's packed in place. I'd like the variance to simply say that we don't install the asphalt. And if you read section 3.1J, it says that the materials can be approved by the engineer. It's not a specific mandate for temporary cul-de-sacs what the materials are. And then by having the asphalt flex-base cul-de-sacs, we would no longer need the barricades and we would no longer need to restrict the building permission for those lots 42 and 19. I'm sure it's just clear as mud, but I'll try to answer questions if I can.
Council, do we have any questions for everyone here?
I'm a little bit confused.
Councilman Allen.
I'm a little bit confused, but.
All right.
All right.
You said you already got the gravel in there to build it. So you're willing to do that, right?
We've done it.
You've done it?
We've done it.
Okay. So what are you asking us to do right now?
To not make us install the 2 inches of hot mix asphalt.
Okay.
That's all that we need right now, is just to not have to install the hot mix asphalt.
Okay. And it's been, you can turn a bus around or whatever?
Absolutely. It
Okay.
meets all of the requirements that the city has, except for adding the hot mix asphalt.
Okay, if you do that, can you still build on those lots that P&Z said not to build on?
Yeah, because now we have a turnaround.
You have the turnaround.
Let me just clarify this. I'm sorry. If the purpose of those cul-de-sacs is emergency vehicle access, flex base is TxDOT gravel, type A, grade 2, flexible base is a limestone gravel material that's put on the ground and compacted in place, and it meets the requirements for fire lane turnarounds by the fire code. It is a paving material. This is not just, it's gravel, but it's not, just random crushed rock. It's a paving material that's certified by the
You've got one out there now that doesn't have a turnaround.
No, both of them do.
No, this was before my time on council, but if you go all the way back to Dead's End, the main body,
That's correct.
and take a right,
There is a road in Abe's Landing that has
Yeah.
a barricade in it and not a cul-de-sac.
That's right.
Because because it was the one abutting where our future culvert's gonna go,
Mhm.
coming out of Phase 4A going north. And it was built with a barricade and not a cul-de-sac.
So next time, you're probably gonna come up and ask for us not to put a cul-de-sac in, period.
I'll be honest with you, the temporary cul-de-sacs, if I'm just speaking as frankly as I can, if you go back to Phase 1 at Abe's Landing, the very first one we did in 2007, all that we did was extend the street through and put gravel for the wings, if you will, so that a truck could turn around. And the temporary cul-de-sacs were very inexpensive, and they weren't a burden on the development. As you progress through, now, they're, for the pair of cul-de-sacs in this subdivision, it was nearly $38,000.
Yeah.
It's a burden on a 29 lot, 30 lot phase. That's
Almost $1,000 a lot.
a huge cost for something that's really not going to be on the ground very long. I mean, P&Z kind of put me on the spot. When's the next phase coming? How long is it there? I can't tell you. There's no way for me to predict when the developer's going to say, let's start the next one. But Abe's Landing since 2007 has been a very consistent development. We've been in front of you guys consistently with new plats and new phases over time, and I expect that to continue until we're finished out there.
Council, any more questions? I have a question for Shad. Shad, as he proposed there, what were the reasons not to approve the material that they're using right now in the cul-de-sac?
I can tell you based on the DRC's discussion, one, probably the biggest thing was the unknown. Obviously, asphalt's probably going to have a longer life than maybe the road base that's being proposed. I think that was some of the biggest concerns. Probably the second was the fact that it goes back to the whole private road argument. So if we don't know if this is going to come in, obviously we don't expect that it's going to default, but if it did, then we wouldn't have the ability to draw down on any surety to
Because
basically.
it's not asphalt.
That's correct. Yeah. So what we're looking at, obviously, with the asphalt is something that will have a long life, so to speak. That being the case, there were some concerns. If this was out there for a long period of time, how long is it technically going to last if big trucks have to get down there, fire trucks have to make those turns? And that's kind of what the concerns were from the DRC side of it when we looked at this variance application.
Council, any more questions for Shad?
Trace. And I think if I could just extrapolate, here again, 5A-1, we didn't bring the variance forward on this. We knew what the costs were going to be, just like we do now. But when you look at the phase, we recognized, and I think everybody recognized, that we needed some better maneuvering and turnaround areas. 5A-2, now that we've built the internal loop, again, 150 feet is the standard recognized dead-end length by fire code for any street. Any fire truck can do a hammerhead turnaround on a 150-foot dead-end run. That's just the way that the fire code is set up. Now, I'm not saying that that's easy for them to do, but it is the recognized emergency vehicle turnaround. So if you go drive through parking lots in the city or in any city, you'll notice that every time you drive behind a building, you don't always have a big giant cul-de-sac out there for a fire truck to turn around. What you have is the ability for them to make a hammerhead 3-point turn and come back out the way they came. So in this phase, we really don't have a life safety issue. I mean, if you really want to, if you consider that 150 feet and then you consider the hose lay distance and you consider all the fire hydrants that you have, we can cover and safely cover by ordinance a fully developed fire on any lot in this phase. The only question was those 2 lots on the ends, and even then, the 150 feet extended beyond the building lots on those 2 lots. So I really don't think on this phase we have a life safety issue. Private road, public road, the developer's always done the right thing out here. It's not an eyesore. Nobody's trying to get away with murder. This is just kind of we expect the next phase to happen soon, and everybody wants to be responsible with their finances.
What I understand, you've already got all the lots of sold probably right now. Okay, thank you. Council, any more questions, concerns?
Trace, I'd like you just to summarize again the inconsistencies in our ordinances.
And Chad, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong. 3.1K has a statement about cul-de-sacs longer than 250 feet shall have a turnaround. 3.1J specifies that if the street is intended to be to be continued in a later phase of the subdivision, then that road shall have a cul-de-sac, even if it's 0 feet long. And then the fire code, the fire ordinance stipulates a 150-foot long dead-end length before you have to have a cul-de-sac. So 3 different places, 3 different lengths.
And when you refer to the fire code, are you talking about the state fire code?
It's the international fire code.
International fire code.
The IFC, and I believe that's the one that Granbury has adopted.
So if we were to adopt that as the ordinance, we wouldn't have this problem.
Well, I think that I really should let Chad answer that question. I would believe that you would have to defer your zoning ordinance to stipulate that dead-end roads shall meet the requirements of the adopted fire code of the city of Granbury.
Because what I'm curious about is, if that's the international fire code, why are we going much, much further beyond that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to be able to speak to the fire code. What I can tell you, I don't know that I'm not aware of the inconsistencies. Sounds like that they're out there. I can tell you, what I can speak to is basically the 2 different requirements for the dead ends. I can tell you we have 2 scenarios for dead end streets under the subdivision ordinance. One is when you have dead end streets that abut into an adjacent phase, as is the case here, and then you have one for dead end streets that abut into somebody else's property, in the case that they develop that property in the future and continue the roads through. So you do have the requirement for cul-de-sacs in this type scenario, and depending on the length you have in the other scenario is when you have the cul-de-sacs in. As far as the spacing goes, I'd have to defer back to the fire inspector who's part of the DRC. Like I said, that's going to be his angle to review this. When we actually sit down and review this particular variance request, it wasn't something that he was comfortable with. So I apologize for not being able to fully answer your question.
And I believe part of our ordinance, it covers that, and you spoke about it earlier, where if it wasn't asphalt, and you have assured us that they're not going to walk away from it, but if in the case that would happen, then we would end up asphalting that. We would be stuck with that. Right, Chad?
That's correct. Any time you have a private infrastructure in the city of Granbury currently, the way our subdivision ordinance is now, we don't get surety for it. So if you're correct, if it does ever default, then we don't have that money to draw down upon.
We can lien the rest of the property, couldn't we, Mayor?
Yeah. Whatever it took, but I mean, it's just the probability and the possibility that something like that would happen, that we would accept their hold of it.
Yeah.
But it's probably something we can look at, but we're not here to change the ordinance right now or the code to change. We're here about this right now, as it stands.
Correct.
So the variance you are requesting is simply to not have to do the hot mix.
That's correct. The way that it's been presented by staff, not the way that it was approved at P&Z. P&Z approved no cul-de-sacs at all. And we're saying we've already got the gravel on the ground, so we would like to just simply not apply the asphalt that was recommended by VRC.
I have one question. I just have a clarifying question. Did the fire department go out there, and were they comfortable, uncomfortable with the way that you currently have the road paved?
I don't know that they've been to the site. I know that the city inspectors have been there, but I don't know that Kevin Jones in particular has.
I can tell you once again, Kevin's part of the DRC committee, and so it's a collaboration. The development review committee is basically made up of various staff members: city engineer, the fire inspector, the planning department, building official, public works inspectors. So we look at this variance request when we receive it, and the consensus of the DRC is that this variance should be denied.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, the consensus of the development review committee is that this variance should be denied.
Okay. Second question, I know we haven't had a hard rain in a while, but is there a situation out there that if we do get a hard rain, that the temporary gravel that you have down would not permit a fire truck from going through there? I mean, there's a big difference between a blacktop road and a gravel condition out there. Yeah, I'm asking.
Yeah, no, you are correct. There's no doubt about it that a blacktop road has a longer longevity and is a much more durable road than a flex base. Compacted flex base does set up and become a hard surface. It's not, again, it's not a driveway. A lot of people think gravel road, they think driveway, residential type driveway. It is a limestone that gets hard on the surface, and it's what's used below asphalt or concrete in a lot of applications. No, if that road sits out there for 5, 6 years and we catch a ton of rain on it, or for the next 5 or 6 years, and people, high school kids do donuts, and it gets abused. Yeah, it won't last forever. But again, it's not intended to last forever. It is a temporary cul-de-sac by ordinance that's expected to be removed and pulled out and hauled off and disposed of for the next phase. So since 2007, I bet we've been here in front of you guys 10 or 12 times for different phases of development in Ames Landing, and I would expect that before much longer, and I mean much longer being this springtime, that we're going to be here with the next phase of the development, and these cul-de-sacs aren't going to be there for longer than a few months. I mean, nobody can guarantee that, but all you have to do is look at the historical development of the property. The other thing I would tell you is the conversation about surety and private roads and public roads and stuff like that. Let's remember that nothing happens in this development. No building permits are issued until the infrastructure is finished and accepted by the city, whether it's public roads or private roads. And there is never going to be an opportunity where the city would have to build these cul-de-sacs. It just wouldn't happen. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I hope it did. The road is when I had a conversation with Kevin Jones, he would have to be here to speak to confirm this. I can just tell you what he told me is that flex base is fine with me.
Would the solution possibly be is if we approve the construction as you've indicated tonight, based on some kind of approval from URC or some kind of concern from URC with the acceptability of that.
And this is this was the original variance that we discussed. So the original variance that we discussed at DRC was the actual utilization of the flex base that he's presenting now. And that's what the DRC's, that's correct. That's what we're recommending denial of. Yes, sir.
Can you read, well, it doesn't matter. 3.1J,
mic here so we can.
I'm sorry, is it back on? Okay.
Can we call a question on this, Mayor? I mean, we've discussed it, and I got a motion for you, and y'all can vote it up or down.
We have a call to question in a second.
A second.
I'm not positive how to make this motion, but knowing there's already a street out there that's put in years ago without a cul-de-sac, and P&Z approved it without one, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and use the base that you've got now and not have to put hot top on it.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, Councilman Allen, and the motion reads to go ahead and use the base he has now. So basically going with the present one that we're looking at right now for the 2 temporary cul-de-sacs located at the end of Boat Landing Trail and Paddle Boat Drive. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And we have a second by Councilman Couch. Any more discussion, Council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That is approved as. See right. Our next item would be item number 8, a public hearing and consider approval regarding a request of the City of Granbury to amend sections of City of Granbury zoning ordinance. The amendments are proposed to section 4.1.a, use permit by district regarding accessory dwell units and temporary outdoor commercial amusement centers. Also section 4.2/ supplement standard regarding distance requirements for the temporary outdoor commercial amusement centers. Section 5.3-5.7 the single-family residential district, section 7.2.f dash prohibited signs, section 7.5.e dash specialty signs, article 8 dash landscape requirements, section 11.7.a exterior construction materials for residential districts, section 11.10.a accessory dwelling units, section 12.2 general definition, and section 12.3 land use definitions. Shad, before you get started here, I'll let the council know this is kind of a going over some zoning things and kind of cleaning up some things. And if you look, it's going to be pretty lengthy here. We've got about 11 items here we're going to be going through. So I'm going to let Shad talk about these a little while and go through them. So keep kind of track where we're at on these and keep notes on what you want to talk about or discuss or change possibly. And as we finish up there, we'll go back down through them so we can make a pretty good motion on the overall item. So Shad, would you enlighten us on this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be brief but thorough. Starting at the beginning here, most of, like Mayor said, most of these amendments are really technical. They're kind of cleanup. I don't know if the council remembers, but we did have some ordinance amendments probably 6 to 7 months ago, kind of loosening the restrictions, mainly for accessory building type situations, enlarging the actual accessory buildings, allowing them to be a little bit closer to property lines and so on and so forth. That was kind of a genesis of a lot of residential property owners really needing something larger than a 120 square foot building and really wanted to locate those. So those ordinance amendments went through. In doing so, they kind of put some of the other requirements in flux, I would say. So not everything is kind of matching up. So kind of what I did was do a mock building permit and went through here to see what portions of this would kind of hang up. And that's kind of what the genesis of these ordinance amendments were. But I'll start at the very beginning. Section 4.1, there's 2 amendments to that as well as section 4.2. These are our land use standards, one being the land use table, section 4.2 being the supplemental standards. I'll start at the top, and this is basically remove a requirement for a specific use permit for accessory dwelling units. This is the current zoning ordinance use table. You can see in yellow, in red is the SUP requirement, and that SUP requirement for the accessory dwelling units is for the interim holding, the residential estate in the R12 zoning district. Basically, that's going to be a lot 12,000 square feet or greater. Currently, the way that the ordinance is written, a specific use permit is required. However, we have a different type of accessory dwelling, a garage apartment. It's basically an accessory dwelling unit constructed in conjunction with the garage that's allowed by right in these 3 zoning districts. So that's a conflict, and we're proposing to allow basically change the specific use permit only for those 3 districts and basically say an accessory dwelling unit is allowed by right on any lot 12,000 square foot, residential lot 12,000 square foot or greater. The second part of this ordinance amendment is going to be right below this. This is regarding an amusement, a temporary carnival, so to speak. We've had these throughout in the past. Generally, they were cited at the Mike Brown Ford lot on 377. That's not the case anymore. Last year, we tried to cite one of these through a specific use permit and found it very difficult to cite these. The way that the language is written now, it basically prohibits these temporary carnivals within 300 feet of any property zoned or used for residential, and that's that. So if you are within that 300 feet of zoned for residential, or any kind of a nursing home or school, then it's prohibited. That was very difficult to cite these last year. So what we're proposing to do is kind of modify the language, and you can see here we're striking out 6 and 16, which is basically that 300 and 500 foot distance requirement, and adding 34 and 35. The language there, it's specific to both carnivals, the difference being 300 feet for just your standard, 500 feet if a carnival's utilizing like a PA system. In either case, if they do fit within that 300 feet, then basically they have the ability to approach that property owner and get approval from that property owner. In the case that they can't, if it's multiple property owners and they can't get 100% of those property owners to agree, they still have the ability to bring that to P&Z and the council and have that deliberated on to see if maybe that's an appropriate place. Perhaps there's an issue where there's no adverse impact. What I can tell you now, we do have a site behind Burger King. It's zoned for residential. There's nothing on it but a parking lot. It is an ideal location for something like this, but it can't be done based on the way the current zoning code is. So these amendments would actually allow it in a space like that. It's a residential, undeveloped property with asphalt basically surrounded by commercial area. So this would actually give them the flexibility to pursue a location like that with consent of the property owner, which they would have to sign off on the SUP application for anyways. The next step is regarding sections 5.3 through 5.7. These are all the sections regarding our single family districts, basically your R12s, your R10s, all the way down to the 7,000 square foot district. This is a section we're proposing called enhancement to the street. Basically, this will allow our certain architectural features, porches, stoops, bay windows to extend into the front building line. The key here is to kind of break up the front building line when you're driving down the street. Hopefully get people in their front porch as opposed to being on their back porch. Maybe they will communicate a little better with each other. But all these enhancements to the street would actually be covered in each single family district. And basically they can utilize their property, like I said, encroach into that front building line with just these specific features and kind of vary down the street. The next section is regarding signage. Right now we do have a prohibition for signs. That's going to be item 15, which is struck out on your screen. Currently the city of Granbury prohibits rope lighting or linear LED lighting along the perimeter of a building. This is something that's come up with sign permits actually quite frequently, specifically also like with gas station fuel pump canopies, they have light bars, so on and so forth. That being the case, based on this code, that's kind of something that has to be, it's interpreted to be prohibited, and we've had to deny sign permits. I looked back on this requirement to kind of see what the genesis of it was. It was approved right around the time 2007, 2008. I really couldn't find any definitive reason. However, I think it's redundant. That being the case, if it's an issue of controlling any kind of light to form a commercial message, that's covered under our sign ordinance. Any kind of a commercial advertising on a building does have to comply with our sign code. They do have to pull a permit for it. If maybe another concern was intensity, I can tell you that's also covered under our sign ordinance. So certainly any building that puts a perimeter lighting on there, it couldn't be amped up to such an intensity that it's going to bleed over and cause any kind of adverse impact to residential. So that being the case, I feel that that's covered. I'm proposing that be stricken. The next section is also regarding signs, more specifically specialty signs. Excuse me. As you may be aware of, we do allow the electronic message board signs in the city of Granbury. They are required to be attached to the monument style signs. You probably see them on several businesses in the city. Right now, the zoning ordinance only allows those, basically the color of those electronic message boards to be amber. We did have a test site basically that went through ZBA a couple of years ago, and it's the Granbury Dental Center. You've probably seen it. It is a color sign. The key being there, we wanted to see if we did get any kind of feedback on it. We haven't seen any complaints. In fact, we've seen more people wanting to do the same thing. So we're proposing to basically strike the amber-only prohibition. This would allow color signs. It won't allow any kind of a spell-on display, simply just allow them to utilize color. So they won't be able to come up and put a moving picture on the sign or do anything that's going to distract drivers. It'll solely allow just more than just an amber color. The next is Article 8, landscaping requirements. I'll just go into kind of the keys of what we were doing here, and that's going to be the use of drought-tolerant plants, more water conservation, better irrigation practices, and then actually creating kind of a credit system to reward kind of the developers that come in and do this drought-tolerant landscaping. And that credit system will essentially reduce the overall amount of plantings that they have to have. and hopefully work twofold with what Public Works is intending to do and kind of conserve water and stop some of the excessive watering that's occurring. And those are the keys there, and I'll certainly be happy to answer any questions. I'll keep going through the rest of the zoning ordinance, but once again, this is just an example of some of the credits that you can get for landscaping. So in other words, something simple like using a rain sensor to cut your irrigation system off during the rain, that can get you a 2% reduction in your overall landscaping requirement. The credits themselves, I believe, work up to possibly 7%, so almost half of your landscaping requirement can be reduced by using these more drought-tolerant planting materials and better irrigation practices. Section 11.7a, this requirement is to basically add in detached garages to include for residential masonry standards. Prior to the zoning ordinance, detached garages and attached garages obviously were always required to meet the 80%. During some of the tweaks that I made to the zoning ordinance, you can infer that a detached garage can be built of some kind of an exposed metal material. That really wasn't the intent by staff. Obviously, we want the garages detached to match and represent the primary structure. In the case that they don't have a primary structure out of siding, they can obviously request a special exception, and that's generally something that the ZBA doesn't have any objections to. But this just clarifies for a new structure that whether they do a detached garage, it still needs to meet the same 80% masonry, and it pulls that out from an accessory building, which they obviously don't have to put the masonry on. The next section is accessory dwelling units, and this kind of goes back to the very first section that we talked about. The way that the language is written now, it requires an SUP for the accessory dwelling units. That's one thing we're proposing to change, obviously, to permitted by right within the interim holding, the residential estate in the R12. But this language also is kind of conflicting, and what it says is, and this is item number 1 under 1110A, one accessory dwelling unit may be constructed by right, that's the change by me, on any lot with an area not less than 1/2 an acre. Well, the fact that a garage apartment is allowed on a 12,000 square foot, those don't comply with each other. So what I'm proposing to do is scratch that 1/2 acre. So essentially it'll go back to the use table. You can do an accessory dwelling unit, whether it's a garage apartment or just your basic accessory dwelling unit, by right on any lot 12,000 square foot or greater. In the case that it's not a 12,000 square foot lot, then the applicant simply applies for a specific use permit, and that smaller lot size can be deliberated on by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. And the remaining sections of that are regarding height. Certainly all accessory dwelling units are regulated both by the setbacks but also by the maximum coverage. Every lot has a maximum coverage for building and impervious surface. So they can't go out there and basically construct accessory buildings from one end of the property to the other. That's regulated. The only thing this clarifies, obviously sometimes these garage apartments are taller, they're in the back of the house. So this would allow them to exceed the primary height of the main structure. They would still have to adhere to the zoning ordinance maximum height requirement. And then we'll get to the definitions. The 3 big ones are going to be on your screen: accessory building, accessory dwelling, and accessory use. Basically what I did was clarify the difference between them, and I better delineated what an accessory building was. I can tell you once again from permanent experience, the big trend now is for more pergolas and more outside kitchens in the backyard. I think the language that we had previously in our zoning ordinance could be interpreted where those type structures were, if constructed, that they had to meet the building setback requirements, which generally means they're pushing them right up against the house. A lot of people want to take more opportunity or more advantage of their backyard. So this kind of clarifies what's accessory building. The previous zoning ordinance increased the size of accessory buildings and allowed them closer to their rear property lines. So this better defines that. So you have an idea, for example, for a pergola. Prior to this, somebody could come in and say, well, a pergola is going to have to meet the building setbacks, and we've been running into that to a lot. So this will allow them to come in, construct a pergola around their pool within the building setback. Once again, these type accessory buildings will be regulated by the impervious cover requirement. So you're not going to see a just covered backyard with any kind of accessory buildings. We still have those limits in place. Once again, clarify main building. This will also say attached garage. We're trying to get that across because there's another definition where you could allude to that it's a garage. We're trying to say that a detached garage is more of an accessory use, however we want it in masonry. The purpose is if someone builds in a detached garage, then as long as they're adhering to their maximum size requirements, it can be more nuzzled up against their rear property line in case they want to do kind of a rear entry type driveway. And then lastly, for the definitions, for the general definitions are irrigation. We provided 2 definitions of both alternative and conventional. These are referenced in Article 8, and basically for the purpose of our ordinance, we referenced them, so we wanted to define them. Alternative irrigation is going to be your rainwater collection systems. I know a trend, it may not be as popular here. Some people are using these tanks that harvest rooftop rainwater, and then they basically recirculate it into their irrigation system. Things like that aren't your conventional underground pipes is what we're trying to get across, and those correlate back to Article 8 for the landscaping ordinance. And I believe I just have a couple more land use definitions. A garage apartment is essentially an accessory building. Really didn't get that out of our current definition, so we're just kind of making that more clear, and then pointing to the actual accessory dwelling definition. And I believe that's it for the zoning ordinance amendments. So I will be happy to answer any questions. I appreciate your letting me go through those, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Shad. I'll now open up the public hearing. Has anybody in the public got any issues with these items that he has talked about? Close the public hearing. Council, we have one? Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. That's the law. Thank you, Mr. Becker.
What was the question, Mayor?
No, we've got, I've got 2 people that want to speak on item 8, both of them, item 8. The first one being Tom Baker.
Tom Baker, 1002 West Pearl. Being there's 15 or so items here, I'm only really speaking about item number 8, which is the allowance for the carnivals in different districts. We started this process last spring, we being the Historic Merchants Association. We went to Graham and observed a carnival there that is smack dab in the middle of the largest town square in Texas, and they've been having this carnival for 40-some years. Very well run. They needed a hard surface to set up their amusement rides and such. So we came back to Granbury, and originally Walmart said that we could use their property, but then their legal folks in Arkansas said that we couldn't do it. So Shad and I started looking at other properties around town that we could possibly look at. We looked at the community bank. We looked at old Mike Brown's lot out of 377. We looked at a big lot that's across from Brookshires. Stonewater Church we looked at. Granbury Independent School District's lot we looked at. And we also looked at Shanley Park, but the carnival people want to have an asphalt or concrete lot to put their rides and amusements on because of they can support it better than a grass lot can do. And we found out that there was a lot of prohibitions being, if we were too close to churches, schools, daycare centers, senior citizen centers, zoned or occupied residential. Every one of these lots was unable to be used because of those requirements. The one that was mentioned behind Burger King or McDonald's has been zoned residential since like 06 or 07, but nobody's developed it. It is asphalt. It was a parking lot for something for a long time. It's still used occasionally for parking for McDonald's and Burger King employees and some overnight trucks and such. But it's not within 200 or 300 feet of churches, schools, daycare centers, etc. It was the best lot that we could find. But even that we couldn't use because the way it was zoned residential, even though not occupied residential. So with some initiative from the Community Development Department and talking to us and such, we hope to get some leeway into this ordinance so that we could have carnivals. Still, it's going to come down to probably using that lot behind Burger King and McDonald's to have the carnivals. Great visibility, there's parking all around, easy access from numerous different directions and such. And now we have a possibility that if people are against it, at least there's a appeal process to it as opposed to just a prohibition because of the residential or the other uses that might be infringed on it. So it wasn't quite as great as we were hoping for, but it's a great compromise. And the Merchants Association has discussed this at quite a bit of length and are quite willing to go this route and work with it to have carnivals probably twice a year. And there's a little more process to get the permit and such, but it looks like it's going to be a good possibility for us to have a carnival, or anybody else to have a carnival on these few different locations. Any questions?
So, Mr. Baker, you're saying that with the supplement, with the changes to section 4.2, it's going to help or it's going to accommodate what you're trying to do with the carnival possibly, right?
Yes, always when there's a SUP being asked for, you contact the surrounding property owners. They have the option of saying yes to it, saying no to it. But if there's a majority of the people who are saying no to it, there still is an appeal process to that. It's a little bit ambiguously worded whether it's 75% of all surrounding property owners are approved or 75% of those that are responding to the question of whether they approve to it or not. But I think at least it gives us an option to appeal a decision that there was no appeal to before. It was either cut or dry. You either could do it or couldn't, and we just could not find, and how many locations was it? 9 different locations that we looked at that told it were unaccessible or unusable because of just that little word or two in there that was too close to something.
So you're talking about 4.1 where it provides a supplement standard in the use charge. Temporary carnivals would be given adjacent property owners within 300 to 500 feet
right.
Of proposed temporary.
I mean, it's a standard SUP,
right.
Basically wording that let the property owners give their consent or express their desire to not consent to it. And I say it gives a good appeal process for it.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Is the property at the state transportation deal ever come up?
Well, that was one of my suggestions across from Brookshires.
Yes.
Great location, except it backs up to residential. It's lot line to lot line to residential, whether it's occupied or not.
Okay.
It was zoned residential, so that negated it right there.
I think I think we ran into that on whether it wasn't residential, then it was a church or some kind of a nursing home that we were.
Yeah, I mean, it was like even if you would have measured from the location of a house or a property, a business, to where the carnival is going to be, even though it far exceeded the 300-foot requirement, because the way that the definition said or the way it was written, property line to property line, the property line's touched, then it negated it right there, even though you probably couldn't see it from the house or the business, or you might not even be able to hear it from that. But the way it was written, it didn't work.
Thank you. Council, any more questions for Mr. Baker?
Thank you.
The next person we want to call upon is Ms. Cynthia James.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And she wants to talk on item number 8 also.
My name is Cynthia James. I have a business at 120 North Houston Street. I want to thank the council members and ask for your consideration to amend section 4.1.a use permit. I ask for your approval regarding this issue. I am an HGMA, Historic Granbury Merchants Association member, and we would like to continue on and do some fundraising so that we can support not only our merchants but the downtown area. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. James? Thank you. Now, we will now close the public hearing. Council, do we have any discussion on any of these items down through there? And make sure we identify which ones we're talking about so I can kind of keep track of if we make any changes or amendments. Councilman Allen.
Mayor, on 34,
34.
Yes, sir. I think it's under 4.1.
Okay, on
It's
number
in,
2. Okay.
It's in yellow.
Thank you.
What does that mean when it says it's got to be 3/4 vote?
So what the intent was there, in the case that so what happens, they're basically going to contact the person who wants to set up one of these temporary carnivals. If they are located within 300 feet of any property that's residential or a church or public school or daycare or nursing home, then they have to contact those and get consent. In the case it's not 100% of those people that are affected in that case, then what we're proposing that it can still be deliberated on by the P&Z and the council, just that it's going to require a super majority vote to approve it. So similar to like a zoning case, when we do kind of the 200-foot halo, and if 20% or more of the property owners within that 200 feet protest, then I believe the council has to approve that zoning change by a super majority vote. The same if I believe if the zoning case is denied by the P&Z and then moved over by council, I believe that's the same requirement now.
Who's going to determine if they got enough majority to bring it to us?
Well, are you referring to the actual people within the 300 feet? Well, I mean, it's similar to the way we do kind of a halo. The staff actually create those notification halos right now using a GIS software, so I would assume we would just kind of do it the same way. Create a buffer off of the property and determine which of those properties would fall into this protected category, and then kind of compare that to the letters that the applicant would provide to us.
All right, thank you.
Shad, I've got one question for you here on number 8, section 11.7, where we talked about the masonry.
Yes, sir.
For the unattached garages.
Yes, sir.
I've got a guy out here that's going to build him a new garage next to a guy that's got an old garage that doesn't have any masonry on it.
Right.
How are we dealing with that?
So generally in those and we do have that situation a lot. What they do in that point is basically apply for a special exception. So what we see a lot of the times are the old houses in the city, they don't have garages, and they do come back, as you said, and they want to build one. Prior to the ordinance amendments that were approved last year, they had to come in and build a brick garage anyways, but they have that special exception process. They make an application to the ZBA and say, obviously I'm trying to match my house, so I want to use, let's say the house is siding in that particular case, and they want to use a siding garage. They have that ability to basically make that application. It happens, I've seen them, and generally the zoning board, obviously they don't want to create any kind of a inconsistency.
They can do that to match probably the neighbor or the neighborhood or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Right?
Sometimes you get those instances for carports, so I mean, yes, sir.
I know Mr. Purple down here is wanting to build him another garage.
And you might be in the historic district, which is a totally different ball of wax.
Okay, Chad. Council, any more questions on any of these items? If not, you're going to make it pretty easy here, where we'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. One thing I would like to state is when we took this to P&Z, the staff was recommending approval of these, of all the landscaping, or excuse me, of all the zoning ordinance amendments as submitted. The P&Z did have some deliberation on the actual landscaping section of the ordinance. Basically, we had some issue, our Planning and Zoning Commission had some of the issues, and I'll get specifically, if you don't mind, I'll go right to that really quick because it's probably something that we should talk about. This item number 7, this was one of the things that has always kind of been there. Staff felt this was a good idea, basically requiring an irrigation system that's used, that they have to use a drip system within 5 feet of kind of any impervious area, so driveways, sidewalks, whatever the case. The intent there was to obviously keep spray heads from blasting water in the sidewalks, so to speak. During the P&Z deliberation, we did have some P&Z commissioners that were kind of wary of this requirement based off of the fact that they perceived that maybe this would have a lot of maintenance issues. So that being the case, the P&Z did recommend approval of the ordinance amendments But specifically to Article 8, they recommended that the irrigation with the 5 feet spray head, or the use of the drip system within 5 feet be optional. And that to basically, if someone did do that, a developer did install that, then we would provide a credit system. So that's the only difference between staff's recommendation and the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. The other thing that came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission was these landscape requirements do not apply to residential. They apply to your single-family residential. They apply to all your commercial districts, and they apply to your multifamily district. But a single-family residential property is not required to install landscaping. If they do so, it's totally optional. But one of the things we looked at here was the irrigation portion of this. If we're requiring irrigation, these drip systems for commercial, then that might not be actually capturing the water conservation that we're after with residential. So one thing to consider is whether or not, if you want to see these irrigation systems use drip within 5 feet, whether you want just the irrigation side of it, not the actual landscape requirement, to also apply to the residential districts. We wouldn't propose that be retroactive, that we would say, hey, you've got to dig up your existing system and put these drips in, but specifically just for new irrigation systems that were put in. They already submit a stamped and sealed irrigation plan, basically, and we would just check to make sure that the new ones had that 5 foot. That's just something to consider. Just to summarize again, staff was recommending approval as presented, and the P&Z was recommending approval with the condition that the drip irrigation be optional and credits be provided.
So that would be an amendment to Article number 8, having a 5-foot drip protection.
That would be an amendment to what staff proposed if it was to be made optional. But if we wanted to roll over the irrigation portion and say if the council's comfortable with the language in 7,
at a later date.
Yes, sir, then we would actually add in some kind of a clause to Article 8 that says this would be applied to residential in the case of new irrigation systems.
Mayor, I'd like to say something on that.
Councilman Allen?
I tell you,
Landscaping expert.
I'm an irrigation expert, not landscaping. All mine dies, but drip is real good for landscaping. But what they're trying to do there is put it under sod. If you ever aerate your lawn, you're going to hit it. And the other thing is that irrigation lines usually runs by the sidewalk, if that's where it's spraying over. With drip, you got to put it like every 12 to 18 inches. So you never know where it is when you're digging. And I'd definitely take that out. I did have one of the P&Z guys call me and ask me about it, and I said, no, I wouldn't recommend it at all. There's baseball fields, football fields that have it. They have a lot of problems, It's good for landscaping. That's going to change anything. I'd use drip in the landscape area, but not on the grass side. No way.
Thank you, Councilman Allen.
Thank you.
Any more discussion, Council? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion then. Anybody want to give me a motion? What I would recommend, if there's a motion out there, would be to approve to consider and approve the request of the City of Granbury to amend the sections of the City of Granbury zoning ordinance with the amendment of Article number 8, drip protection.
You're saying take the drip out, right,
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yeah.
So moved.
Make it optional. Right.
Just so I understand, that would be taking it out completely, or would this be
optional?
Making it optional?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Like as P&Z had recommended. I'm sorry.
So moved.
So I have a motion by Councilman Allen.
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Couch. Any more discussion, Council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Nay.
All opposed, say nay. That has been approved. It wasn't so painful, was it, Chad?
Not painful at all. Thank you, Mayor.
Our next item is a public hearing regarding a request of the City of Granbury to amend sections of the City of Granbury subdivision ordinance. Amendments are proposed to Section 1.17, definition section 2.12.h, development options and credits for park land dedication, section 4.13.f, Three of these: appeals procedure, section 5.2, guarantee of improvements, section 5.3, expiration of construction plan approval, and section 5.4, review of plans and specifications, and consider approval of an ordinance providing for the said proposed amendment. Shad, you want to enlighten us on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. All these changes to the subdivision ordinance are regarding the public improvements policy. This is going to relate back to the temporary cul-de-sacs. As I stated there, any kind of private infrastructure in the city, our subdivision ordinance does not require a surety for. So private streets, any kind of private storm drainage, no surety is collected at the time, or no surety is provided at the time of the plat approval or the public improvement agreement. So city staff is proposing to basically roll both private and public infrastructure into that public improvement agreement. In doing so, a lot of definitions and terms in the subdivision ordinance have to basically be renamed. Probably the key is the public improvement agreement itself, and that would actually be, as in your staff packet, a facilities improvement agreement. And then the other sections of the subdivision ordinance are in regards to everywhere where it states public improvement agreement, and everywhere where it says any public utility or public infrastructure. That would be changed to read facilities improvement agreement and then public and private infrastructure. The reason being, and I'll go back to kind of the same situation that we talked to earlier, and that's going to be the second bullet point here. In the case that we actually do have a situation where the infrastructure is out there, we don't have the surety, and in the case that that development defaults for some reason, the city doesn't have any surety to draw down upon to complete it. And it hasn't happened that I'm aware of here, but you know, it's always a possibility. So this actual amendment is just to kind of to protect the city from that in the case that it ever did happen. That's really it in a nutshell. Most of all the strikeouts or the additions in there are just changing the actual terminology from that public to facilities improvement agreement, and then clarifying that this is public and private. With that, staff and P&Z are recommending approval, of the zoning subdivision ordinance amendments as presented. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Shad. This is a public hearing. I'll open it up to the public hearing at this time. Anybody in the public want to talk on this matter? I'll close the public hearing. Council, is there any discussion on this particular item? Chad, I've got one question.
Sure.
And you answered one of my questions, how often this has happened, and obviously it hasn't happened that you could recall. With this in place, just like what we approved here just earlier with the unpaved turnaround, if that person was to walk away from that, then we would have to finish that out, but we would have the security to do that.
That's absolutely right. I think also in a situation like that last situation where maybe they do have some kind of a loop or something, but the city's kind of worried about long term, it's a little easier to accept it when in the event, knowing that the worst case scenario that they didn't get installed, that we have kind of the funds to draw upon to install those.
So we would have more latitude to go ahead and say, yeah, go ahead and use some, you don't have to asphalt it because we know we're going to be able to get the funding to do that later on if you walk away.
That's correct. I think it also makes it easier at the DRC level when we review these type variance requests.
Thank you. Council, any more questions for Chad?
I've got a couple.
Councilman out.
How would you determine the value of something like that?
Basically, it's the same as they do any kind of a public improvement agreement, any kind of public infrastructure. What the developer's engineer usually does is come up with a cost estimate. So they have a basic standard that they come up with. They run that cost estimate through our city engineer, and they get a kind of an approval on those estimates. It's the same type scenario. We would just include like the private roads as opposed to just the public roads. So it's the same process of coming up with the value. They would just provide surety for all the public infrastructure as well as any private infrastructure.
Since we never had a problem, I'd be against it because I tell you, That's what I hear out on the streets. I know the other council men and girls hear it, is we're hitting people with every kind of permit, every kind of funds to put up. If we never had a problem with it, I don't think we should add it to it. It's just my opinion. Because these builders and stuff, and I know people say the lake's not a big problem, but they're getting scared. And not just developers, but builders, about what's going to happen to the market. And I think we keep hitting them with you put up a surety bond or whatever. This costs money, which adds to the price of the commercial building or the residential. Now, I think we'd have to look at it myself on each item. If it's, let's say if Kroger's wanted to come out here and do something like this, we'd have to look at it. I don't know how you determine the value of it. And if we hadn't had a problem, I'd say not broke, don't fix it.
Like I said, I think the concern is if in the case that it does happen, I think the ultimate idea here was to protect the city in the case that it does happen. Speaking kind of the surety bond, keep in mind that they do get that back once the public, and in this case, if this was approved, public or private improvements were installed. Once they're installed and inspected and accepted, then they get that surety bond back.
But they still got to put up money to do that.
What's the cost of that? It just varies.
The surety bond?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to vary what the cost estimates come out to. So it's going to depend on what's the extent of the public improvements, how many feet of water line, how many feet of roads,
I understand that. We already do that. We already do that on roads,
Sir.
Mayor.
And the reason I asked that, though, is just like the situation we was in here, I'm trying to if the the developer wanted to go ahead, in that case we had earlier, to go ahead and have not the asphalt, had the bond up, and he could have done that the way he wanted to do it, knowing that, and wouldn't have cost him $38,000, $36,000, whatever, because he's assured he's going to come back and you're going to get his money back, and we wouldn't have went through all this other stuff.
Sure.
Because you can do it without. Am I correct in saying this, Jan?
I think in the case, well, regardless if it was a public or private improvement, in that case, a variance would have been processed, would have needed to have been processed by the city because the subdivision ordinance required it. I think in reviewing the variance, knowing in the fact that the key concerns are, what is the term period for these cul-de-sacs? How long will they be out there? It's easier to kind of analyze it and say, well, in the case that they never get put out there, at least the city has kind of an option B in having those funds to actually go out and install them in case, like you said, between that phase and the next phase, it happened to default and they left it. Then we know we're not left with just a dead-end street with the barricade. We can say, hey, we have the money to maybe to put the cul-de-sacs in if that's what they provided the surety for.
And what you're saying is he would not have had, if he'd have put up a surety bond, he wouldn't have done any of that work. He would have just had a barricade, right?
No, he'll have to do it, but it'd have to be approved by us not to do it, but then we have the security.
Yeah, it's really all in the review of him not wanting to do it requires a variance regardless if this is public or private, but in reviewing that variance, the fact that the city does have an option B kind of makes it easier. In this particular case, we don't have surety for it. So one of the biggest concerns was they put in road base, they default, we're stuck with road base. Over time, that's going to deteriorate. The people there are going to obviously say, hey, how, buses are going to go down those streets, they're going to want to turn around, and they're going to come to the city. And in that case, we wouldn't have any kind of money to utilize to get those turnarounds in.
Bottom line, if I'm going out here and I'm going to go ahead and approve some substandard or whatever use road base, then I'm feeling good about it because I got the surety there that if they walk away from it, I've at least got money to finish it out.
That's correct. I think if someone comes to say, the reason we're doing this is because this is more of a temporary type nature, and obviously we want to extend the streets in, then I think to me it's something that's easier to assess, kind of a waiver for, knowing that you do absolutely, have an option B.
Council, any more questions, discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Do I have a motion? I'm looking for a motion. I'd hate for this to fail without a lack of a motion.
I'll make a motion not to do it.
I have a motion by Councilman Allen. Let me clarify this to not do the amendment to the section that has been described here.
Correct, sir.
I have a motion. I have a second. Fails for lack of a second. Fails for lack of a second. We'll move on to number 10. Unless there's another motion. Is there another motion? I can help you entertain a motion here that you would approve the said request for the City of Granbury to amend sections of the City of Granbury subdivision ordinance as has been identified here in section 1.17. Anybody entertain that motion? Yeah. I hear yes? Yeah. I have a motion by Mr. Mickey Parsons. Councilman Parsons. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? As it reads here, I'm entertaining a motion to approve the request of the City of Granbury to amend sections of the City of Granbury subdivision ordinance amendments that in this section 1.17 that has been discussed here.
About using face.
No.
No. It's to put the security up, whether it's face or whatever. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I guess my question here is, obviously in the case that we had earlier, the reason why he didn't want to set fireplace down is because that was going to cost the developer quite a bit of money. So if we happen to give them an option to make them provide security in case something happens to the developer, I'm thinking that what if the developer goes upside down, away from the project, and then, I was a little bit leery earlier about having gravel there. And you just never know when the developer walks away from a project.
So Councilperson Myers, you have the option here to go ahead and second it, and then we can discuss it. Is that what you want to do right now?
In my opinion, I think it doesn't affect the city,
I have a second by Councilperson Myers. Now, Council, is there any further discussion on this item?
Yes, I do.
Councilman Allen.
I still think what we're doing is putting another layer of Washington, D.C. taxation upon our city people that are trying to develop our town, just like we talked about giving $1 million away. We'll go to Kroger's. We see return on the dollar there. Well, we see return on the dollar whenever these developers go out there and do it. Now, I know and what I keep saying is, we'd heard one time where they said we lost money on the deal. I'd look at it different. Chad said we'd never lost money on it. I'd rather turn this boat down and take it one at a time, just like we did with the deal tonight. The next guy may come in here, or lady, and she may have a different story for us. And it's up to us as council people to either vote on it or turn it down. What we're fixing to vote on is it's an increase in building commercial, residential business that we've never had a problem on. And I've never heard the figure yet what this is going to cost. How much is it going to cost to post a surety bond for what we just talked about tonight? I mean, surety bonds are not easy to get either, by the way. And I just think it's another layer of expense that's going to be passed on to our taxpayers that when they buy here or build here. and never had a problem. If we had problems, I'd say, hey, I'd be the first one to jump up and down and say we need to protect ourselves. If we run into it later, I'd probably look at it a lot different if we had a problem. But we don't have a problem tonight. We've never had problems with that development out there. Every development's different, and I understand that. But I think that's why we got to look at each one of these separate.
Thank you, Councilman Allen. Councilman Purple, you have something to add to that.
Being that I've lived here probably longer than some of them, I feel like I can name several developments that went bellied up. In fact, we have had many developers in this town. The first developer gets the property of the venture goal. And you can go all the way back and talking about every development around the lake has problems. And not only the city, but the county had to pay a lot of it. And you know, I know it's an extra expense, but when you go out and you see 10 or 12 houses vacant, started, and this is not just this is in Indian Harbor, this is in Spanish Trail, this is in I can just name all of them. All of them had problems, and it wasn't everybody, but you know, we've got an expense. We've got to protect you back in.
Laura, I agree with you, but the deal is, most of those you mentioned was out of the city limits. But let's go back and talk about the city. They got to have a bond up to put the roads in, to put the water lines in. We're already charging them for that. This is another extra tax, is what we're talking about here. If they go out there and they don't do the road right, they don't get no permits to build a house. If that water line's not right, they don't get a permit. They have to put up a bond on the roads. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad. They got to put up a bond on the roads, everything they do to get that developed. Now, we know how good bonds are. We found that out with our pipe sticking out of the ground up there. But still, again, it's one of those deals where this is an add-on tax, what we're talking about tonight. Add-on fee. Has nothing to do with somebody walking off. And we've never had a problem with it before, what Chad just said.
Bear in mind, this add-on fee is reimbursed.
Yeah, but it costs them money.
Chad?
The bond does get returned, like I said, once the surety does get returned once the improvements are installed, inspected, and accepted by the city.
So if they had $300,000 worth of improvements, what would the surety bond cost them to put up?
They have to put up 100% of the surety for those improvements. So if it's $300,000, then they have to put up $300,000.
Right. Well, I concur with Mr. Allen. I'm not prepared to add another burden to our developers until we see that we actually have a problem, and we haven't seen that.
Right now, council, we have a motion and a second, and we have the opportunity to vote on this. Any more discussion? This time, all in favor say aye. All opposed say nay.
Nay.
Not approved. Our next item, item number 10, is to appoint Our next item is to appoint to fill a vacancy on the Zoning Board of Adjustments. Council, as you knew, last week we had an opening for, I believe it was Parks, but we had an opening on one of our boards, and we had an applicant, and she did not get on that board, but we still have an opening now on our ZBA board, our Zoning Board of Adjustments, and this applicant, Carrie Bellamy, has expressed an interest in an application to fill that vacancy. So council, this time I would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Carrie Bellamy to the ZBA Board of Adjustments.
So moved.
I've got a motion by Councilman Couch. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilperson Myers. Any more discussion, council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That is approved to fill that board with applicant Carrie Bellamy. The next item, number 11, is to consider and approve an ordinance amending the City of Granbury regulations pertaining to vehicle for hire, including taxi cabs, limousines, shuttle service, horse-drawn carriages, and pedicabs. Council, this has been put on the agenda because it appears that there's some, here again, some restrictions on our requirements for a taxi cab service to come into our community here, and so we've asked the attorney to draw up some other language on this. So if I could, I'd have you share that with us right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a project that first started a number of years ago. We saw this, I believe, in 2011, but at that time the council did not adopt a new ordinance. Since that time, I've been approached, I think staff has too, by various companies desiring to start either a taxi cab service or a horse-drawn carriage rides and services in the city. But there's always been one common complaint, and that is that the current ordinances are outdated. I think they were written in 1991, and that they're confusing. The biggest issue being nobody knows where you get the application to become a taxi service, who's supposed to fill out the application, who you're supposed to turn any application into, and it's just, and how the vehicles get inspected and whatnot. I sat down from ground zero and wrote this ordinance. It seems long, but the reason it's long is because it does include not only taxis but also horse-drawn carriages, pedicabs, limousines, and shuttle services. Knowing that we don't have pedicabs and shuttle services now, but we might have them one day in the future. And so I drafted this ordinance. The basic goal of what I'm trying to do here is the process would be there's an application. You fill out the application to the police department. You cite who you are, your name of your business, who's going to be driving your cars, what kind of cars you have. Those cars are inspected by the PD. You're issued a permit and you're allowed to start going. We do have some restrictions in here on who can drive the vehicles. I think it's necessary to do some of that stuff. Like the requirements would be you have to be 19 years old, you have to be a legal resident of the United States, you have to hold a valid driver's license, you have to be able to communicate in English, you have to not have any kind of mental disease or disability that will prevent you from driving the car safely. You can't have any more than 2 moving violations in the past 3 years, and you can't be under an indictment for a whole list of crimes which you see on page 11, including homicide, kidnapping, assault, robbery, things like that. The process for taxi cabs in this ordinance is a little bit more strenuous with the inspection requirements just because of the nature of the business. But on limousines and horse-drawn carriages and pedicabs, it's very much fill out an application, get your vehicle inspected, and then you're free to go about your business. There's no limit on how many different companies the city could permit. So if more than one company wants to come and offer a taxi service, then they would be welcome to, as long as they fill out the permit and get their vehicles inspected. So I tried to make it as user-friendly as I could, keeping in mind that these new businesses may be coming into town soon.
And Councilor, you did a great job on this and covered a lot of areas there. And would this actually be a packet that would go to anybody submitting an application where they could read over it and come back and do the application process?
I have not drafted the application yet because I wanted to see the ordinance get adopted first before I spent the time drafting the application. But yes, I can imagine that we could certainly form a type of booklet to include all of this information in it.
The reason I say that is so it's pretty lengthy that somebody would want to probably digest it a little bit first.
Another complaint that I heard, and I apologize for leaving this out, was that in the fee schedule 1.50 of the Code of Ordinances, the fees were way too out of sync with other cities that have taxi services. So I looked at other cities such as Fort Worth, Dallas, and Arlington that are larger and that have taxi ordinances, and the fees are now more in line with those.
Council, there you have it. Are there any questions for Councilor here? I think this is a good thing. I think there's been some thought on on allowing taxi service, and not only to just tie right into our Clean Air Coalition to encourage sharing rides so that we can have people transported from one side of town to the other in a taxi service. And I think that would help us also get into that category. So I think it's a good thing.
Mayor,
Councilman Allen.
Thank you. You know, you said as many people wanted to could come in and fill out an application, get approved. But my thoughts on that is if you got 5 people with cabs here, none of them's going to make enough money to stay in business. Is there a law against us limiting it to 2 companies or 3 companies or anything like that?
There's no law in it that would prevent you from doing that. I guess my thought was in a capitalistic society, if they can make money, let them make money.
Yeah.
That was my thought. I didn't want to limit it to 1 or 2 companies that look like you're showing preference to one company.
No, I think it's a good idea, but on the other hand, how many requests have we had for taxi? I mean, I know a lot of people's asked me and y'all and everybody else, but how many people said I want to put in a cab company?
I think I've had 3 in the last 6 months.
And I know since several people have been on the council, I've talked to several councilmen that people have expressed an interest.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was in there that we're relaxing on is the requirement for a certain year of vehicles and things like that. So we're trying to put some things in there that would allow them to come in and to run a business to make a profit.
No, I think you're doing a good job, Mayor. I really do. But I'm just thinking if 10 people sign up,
that's
2 months from now, nobody's in business. That's the only thing that scares me.
Council, any more discussion? Councilman Parsons.
Someone
You on?
signed up for Uber and came into town under Uber. I assume they would be under the limousine criteria.
Yeah. We can't hear you down here.
My question is, would Uber or someone that came in with an Uber franchise, would they be underneath the limousine, the black car part of the ordinance, or would you try to push them back into the taxi? Uber's an application. They're having a fairly sizable argument about it over in Dallas now. Uber is you enter into your phone that you want to ride from wherever you are to someplace, and a black car driver gets that notice and comes, picks you up, and tell you, well, I'll take you over there for whatever amount they quote. Apparently much more flexible, much easier to get, and apparently, anecdotally at any rate, quicker than getting the yellow cab to find you in Dallas. So I'd like to make sure that in applying that we say that Uber and those kinds are available underneath the limousine or black car service as opposed to a cab with a meter in it. And we might find that in the city of Granbury that works much more effectively.
I do have, Councilman Parsons, the term limousine is defined in page 2, and then the term taxi cab is defined itself in page 4. And I'm not familiar with the service with which you're referring to. However, there is a prohibition in here from one taxi cab having a scanner in their car, and the thought behind that was if a person calls the yellow cab company, you don't want the black and white yellow company to hear that on the scanner and then show up at that person's house and try to steal that business. And I don't know if that's how, I don't think that from how you describe it that's how the business you're talking about works. But under this ordinance, it would be my intention that company would come and that they would file a permit with the PD and say how many vehicles they're going to have. And then however their business model works for them, they'd be allowed to engage in that business.
And I think given the fact that we haven't had a taxi service in here in some time, or cab, or any type of activity like that, there's probably room for some tweaking once we do get some companies in the city of Granbury that want to set up a business here. So, but I think with the draft that you've got right now is a pretty thorough draft and something that we can start on.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with it. I move that we pass the ordinance as presented in hopes that it works and get something started, and we'll tweak it if necessary.
Thank you, Councilman Parsons. We have a motion and we have a second by Councilman Allen. Any more discussion, Council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That does approve. That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the council meeting. If there's no further discussion, we are adjourned.